Hello, dear participants, and welcome to this webinar on all you need to know about dissemination and exploitation under Horizon Europe. I hope you can hear me. If I can have just a quick sign from...
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. My name is Lara Passante. I'm a Deputy Head of Unit in the European Commission's Directorate General for Research and Innovation. I have the pleasure today to guide you through our webinar. And I'm here with a whole team of colleagues from DG Research and Innovation. And we are also joined by the European IP Help Desk and the CEO of Meta. So this webinar, as you might have seen, is part of a series that we started earlier in March to provide guidance to potential applicants to upcoming Horizon Europe calls, and in particular about modalities for preparing their proposals. So in those previous webinars, colleagues have already addressed dissemination and exploitation of results linked to future projects under Horizon Europe. But today we will really deep dive into what is expected from you as an applicant at the proposal stage when it comes to dissemination and exploitation. What will be expected from the future beneficiaries when they will manage their project throughout of the project lifetime, but also after the end of the project. But very importantly, what we're going to explain you today is as well the services and the tools we will put at the disposal of beneficiaries for optimally disseminate and exploit their results. So I also take the opportunity to mention that the thematic Horizon Europe Info Days will take place later on this month between the 28th of June and 9th of July. You can follow them online, no registration needed. And then, of course, I cannot not mention the European Research and Innovation Days, the flagship annual event for research and innovation in Europe, the 3rd edition, taking place on the 23rd and 24th of June. For this, you need to register. Please feel free to do so. We are really looking forward to join you and debate with you at the EURNI Days. So coming back to our webinar today, so it is being broadcasted on our YouTube channel. So it's being recorded and will be posted after the webinar on the events page of the funding and tenders portal together with the slides. I will ask all panelists and presenters if you can switch on your camera and wave at participants so that you can see there are people behind the screens. You will see them later during their presentations, but let's just have a quick check. Voilà, hello. Thanks a lot. And so, well, we have organized an interactive event for you as much as we could in those circumstances. And to interact with you, we will use the tool Slido, for which you have the link on the events page, but also you might have seen already the QR code. We will show you in a minute. So we will use Slido for asking you a few questions, like to get the temperature, what is the audience we're having today. But of course, we will ask you to use Slido to put us questions throughout the webinar. We will have a dedicated Q&A session, but of course, we'll try to take questions after the end of each presentation if time allows. Before putting a question in Slido, I will ask you if you can check whether it has already been raised by someone else. And also to vote for other questions you might find relevant, which means that we will go in order of priority, of popularity, sorry, for the questions, the most voted ones, which probably means we will not be able to answer them all. But don't worry, nothing will be lost. We will use all the questions to feed future webinars and the FAQ section on the funding and tenders portal. I will ask now, perhaps if we can put on the agenda slide. So we quickly go through it together if you haven't already seen it. So voila, just to go quickly through the agenda slide, we will have first an introduction on concepts of communication, dissemination and exploitation from Stéphanie Weber from the European IP Help Desk. Then novelties on dissemination and exploitation under Horizon Europe, both for the proposals and then for the projects from Arya Marie Batrung from DG Research and Innovation. Then a presentation on IP strategy in Horizon Europe projects, including the role, the result owner list, and some background on standardization from Ioannis Sajas and Veronica Benates Pinheiro from DG Research and Innovation. Then we'll have the dedicated Q&A session I just mentioned, but we'll try to get to answer some questions after the end of each presentation if time allows. We'll have a coffee break, and then we will start the second part with a presentation on IP management, specifically in collaborative Horizon Europe projects from Jörg Scherer from the European IP Help Desk and Horizon IP Scan. And then about the services and tools I was mentioning before that we'll put at the disposal of beneficiaries. One presentation on the Horizon Result platform from Michel Maccabi from DG Research and Innovation, and then on the Horizon Result Booster from Alessia Melazeke, the CEO of Meta. If everything is working properly, I would propose that we simply start with the first presentation. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Lara. I hope you can all hear me well. Give me a second. I'll start to share my screen. Which I hope you can all now see very well. So thanks again for this very kind introduction, Lara. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Weber. I'm a communications manager at the European Research and Project Office, EURES, and in this role, I'm heading the communications team, and also I'm responsible for the communication activities of the European IP Help Desk, which I'm representing here today, and very pleased to do so. You will hear about the European IP Help Desk later in more detail from my colleague Jörg Scherer, but just very briefly, the European IP Help Desk supports European researchers and SMEs that are involved in European funded projects or cross-border transnational business activities in dealing with IP issues, managing IP, valorizing IP. So we cover the whole, scale of from starting from awareness raising to actually strategically manage IP and try to build capacities. And we've teamed up with the team of DG Research and Innovation for Horizon 2020 to come up with a publication and a guiding document looking at how communication, dissemination, and exploitation come together actually, and what role IP management plays in this. So this is why I'm here and why I have the pleasure to give you a brief overview of the three concepts today. So basically, I will set the stage for all the speakers that are coming after me, and I'll do that by trying to paint the bigger picture, why we should actually care about those concepts, why you or beneficiaries that intend to submit a proposal should care about that. And then in the second step, I will briefly outline what these concepts actually mean and what you have to keep in mind. So let's get started. And it would probably be a little bit inaccurate to say Horizon Europe is all about impact, but let's face it, it's a lot about impact. And you see that reflected in the whole setup of the program. We've seen that in the development. And in fact, the guiding principle that we see here of maximizing impact has been a key building block of the previous program already. So it is, in fact, a continuity. But what is quite clear, and you'll see this in this webinar session, is really that efforts have been stepped up to actually, throughout the program, to treat impacts in credible pathways, and we will come to that term later on, to reach those impacts in a more rigorous and also in a more systematic way. And this is not only reflected in the documents that we have for beneficiaries, but I think this expectations of really sort of maximizing impact, maximizing the value and the added value of EU research and innovation funding is something that the European Commission reflects also, for instance, by introducing a brand new monitoring approach, which I've put here, namely the key impact pathways. So it's the European Commission itself is much more precise about what impacts are actually expected. And I think it's very valuable to see, and that we not only speak about scientific impact, but also about societal impact and economic impact. Because sometimes also with regard to exploitation, we tend to believe that exploitation of research results is only limited to commercial exploitation, which is by no means the case. And it's, I think it's very good that this is reflected in these key impact pathways as well. And communication, dissemination, and exploitation, to come back to today's topic, are of course an integral part of each Horizon project. And as I said, that was the case in Horizon 2020 projects already, but it's even more the case in Horizon Europe, because it's a fundamental aim and objective to really sort of maximize and increase the impacts of those research projects. And when you dive deeper into the documents and also reflect on the conditions and expectations that are posed, then you will find a lot of attributes like credible, plausible, measurable, suitable, and tailored. And again, I think all this reflects really what I mentioned in the beginning, that it's really about following up on those strategies, really coming up with a sound strategy and not get lost in loose ad hoc activities. So really have a clear picture of where you want to go and what the different activities, be it communication, dissemination, or exploitation, are used for. What's the overall aim? What's the purpose? And how can those measures really contribute to achieving the outcomes and the impacts that are expected? And I will come to the differentiation between the terms outcomes and impacts also a little later on. So another question that we often see and that we've seen in the past is that communication, dissemination, and exploitation activities are very often considered still as boxes that beneficiaries or proposers have to tick. This is something, you know, maybe some might even consider it as the inevitable evil, something that you simply need to do in order to get funded and to get your research funded. But I think we need a change of mindset here, really. And I would really encourage beneficiaries and you to look at it more from the perspective of your own, what you will gain from those activities. Of course, and this is the first bullet point here, it clearly will improve the chances of success of your proposal. And we will come to that later, and the speakers after me will dive deeper into that, what really is expected and how this is a criterion for positive project evaluation. But I think what's even more important is that communication and bringing your work and results to the attention of multiple audiences really creates visibility for yourself or for your business, for your invention and your innovation. And that again, in turn, enhances your reputation and sort of, you know, gives you the credit that you actually own. So it helps gain understanding for what you're actually doing. And this is for your own benefit. And I think this is something that you and we all should keep in mind, that really, you know, those activities and plans that are asked for in the context of those projects is nothing that the European Commission has come up with to make your life harder, but really to see the benefit and the advantages that lie within those activities for your personally, for your team, for your company. Because engaging in those activities actually also will open up further sources of funding or you know, interesting business opportunities, really by explaining what your project does and how it successfully contributes to tackling pressing challenges of our time. So really help support the spread of your knowledge, enable others to build upon that, but also for yourself to create a platform from which you can then move forward in the future. I think this is a message that we should stress and bring across. So nevertheless, of course, apart from those benefits and looking at it more from this perspective, there are, of course, contractual obligations. And I will be very brief because I don't have much time in this very brief introduction. But I picked those two, let's see, key documents where you'll find legal articles that are dealing with the topics that we are discussing here today. And again, you will hear more about some of them later on in the subsequent talks. So first of all, of course, we have the rules for participation, and we have respective articles here. But then we have, of course, another central document, which is the Horizon Europe Model Grant Agreement. And here, primarily, it's Article 16 and Article 17 that deal and outline requirements and conditions with regard to communication, dissemination, and exploitation. And I have to say that the articles in the Horizon Europe Model Grant Agreement are quite straightforward. They're very concise, but I really would like to draw your attention to the Annex 5 and the specific rules here, which are much more detailed and which give significant and very important additional information on how communication, dissemination, and exploitation should be dealt with in those projects. And what I would also like to stress, of course, is that there might be additional obligations related to very specific calls. Plus, of course, there are specific funding instruments and grants that, in addition to these rather general outlines, will require additional aspects, activities, or expectations from beneficiaries, which you should take into account. For instance, the European Research Council grant, or the specific funding opportunities offered by the European Innovation Council. So these as a very brief and general overview. And again, one takeaway message is have a close look not only at the articles, but specifically also at Annex 5, the specific rules if it comes to communication, dissemination, exploitation obligations. So how on earth are you supposed to do that? And how can we actually sort of break this rather abstract concept of impact down? And as I mentioned in the beginning, I think the European Commission has moved forward also here in terms of breaking down and explaining more precisely what kind of impacts actually exist. And we have the destinations. So I think it's compared to Horizon 2020, a much more specific wording. So really make it's easier for beneficiaries to understand really, I think, what is expected and what is understood by certain topics. And a new term that has been introduced is the pathway to impact. And what we understand by that is really the logical steps towards the achievement of the expected impacts of the project over time, and in particular, beyond the duration of the project. I think this is something that is stressed even more in the Horizon Europe projects. And a pathway really begins with the project's results, to their dissemination, exploitation, communication, here we go, contributing to the expected outcomes in the work program topic, and ultimately to the wider scientific, economic, and societal impacts of the work program destination. So really what we want to see here, and what you will find in the proposal template under point 2, impact, is that beneficiaries are asked to provide a credible and a suitable strategy. And I think this is important because the emphasis on tailored strategies, and also taking into account the nature of your project. It has to be proportionate, it has to be well balanced. And it's clear that there is, with regard to dissemination, communication, exploitation, no one fits all solution. That's neither possible nor desirable, but because you really have to look at where you stand, what you want to do, to really provide also measurable and strategic goals that you think are achievable. So I think, again, as I mentioned, it's important to really have the sound strategy in place, something that also the European Commission can follow up, but you can also follow up on during project implementation once your project has been successfully granted. So really be precise and take into account the nature and scope of the project when you outline the narrative and the pathway to impact that you foresee for your project. Coming to a couple of definitions. I mentioned that already. So we have results, we have outcomes, and we have impacts. I'm taking a look at the clock and I have to speed up a little. So these are key terms that you will find. And this is also something new we did not have this differentiation in Horizon 2020 between outcomes and impacts. So results, quite briefly, is everything that you will generate in the project, and that can be tangible and intangible. And if it's intangible, then it's actually, most of that is intellectual property that may be, if appropriate, protected in view of further exploitation, specifically commercial exploitation. So this is what results are all about. And in your project later on, you will probably also have to recognize key results. So not everything that you will generate in the project, will be exploitable, but still the term itself is defined quite broadly. And then we have a specific or an additional specification named the research outputs. These are results that can be made accessible, for instance, through scientific publications or engineered, engineered outcomes such as processes or protocols. So this really is what's understood by results. And outcomes really are the expected effects over the medium term of a project supported under specific topic, and impacts, then I already said, is more is sort of looking into the wider perspective, the wider long-term effects on society, the economy, or science enabled by the outcomes of your research project. So this is how they are sort of interlinked, and the results of your project should contribute to the expected outcomes set out for the work program topic, and then in the medium term, and then in the longer term, expected impacts should be achieved through these outcomes. So to come to communication and dissemination exploitation, we've chosen this image of 3 suitcases that you should bring along when embarking on your Horizon research and innovation endeavor. And I think you need to have a clear understanding of those concepts in order to be then able to come up with very concrete and, as we heard, credible, measurable action plans. So communication itself is probably the broadest term. It really means reaching out to society as a whole. It starts right from the very beginning throughout the lifetime of your project, and it's about informing and promoting the project and the results throughout the project's lifetime. And to do that in a way that a non-specialist audience, multiple audiences in fact, can understand what your project is doing. So basically, it's about telling the world how great it is that you've received, EU taxpayers' money to do that project, and to explain, really, to tell the story how you are going to contribute to make this world a better place, put in a nutshell. And then we have the term dissemination, or the concept dissemination, which is much more targeted. And this is really focused, dissemination activities should be really focused on results only. It's about making your results accessible to potential target groups that may take an interest in actually using them, exploiting them. So really, it's all about transferring and circulating knowledge in order to enable others to work with that and build on that, safeguarding really that the results that you are generating may have an even wider impact than you initially expected. So this is what dissemination is all about. And then we have exploitation, and this is clearly the actual use of results for further research and innovation activities, or all kinds of exploitation. And again, exploitation should not be limited to commercial exploitation. It can be, so it could be also policy recommendations, could be, educational aspects. So really, there's a wide spectrum, again, depending on the nature and scope of your project. The results will come in different forms and shapes, and the exploitation consequently will come in different forms and shapes. And these will all together contribute to different impacts that are outlined in the program. So really, in a nutshell, this is an overview of the 3 concepts once again. And I think it's important to know that all these activities, communication, dissemination, exploitation, aim to help maximize the impact, but they can be differentiated, along the different objectives, along the focus that they have, and the target audience that you're gonna address with those activities. In terms of timing, very important, of course, the strategic planning of these activities already starts before the project at the proposal stage. And you know that you already in Horizon Europe have to provide a first version of the plan for dissemination exploitation, including communication activities, and that is also new at the very beginning as part of your proposal. And it's a mandatory deliverable after 6 months once your project has been granted. So really take time to already develop a sound strategy related to these 3 activities at the very beginning. And then, as I just mentioned, communication, of course, starts at the very beginning. Your project gets granted and you tell the world about it and what you're going to do. But then, of course, dissemination exploitation, being focused on results only, just come into play once those first results arise in the project, and it lasts over the actual duration, beyond the actual duration of the project. I think this is important, and you will hear about that later on. Whereas communication, of course, being focused on the project activities, will end with the end of the project. And also, which is also clear, I mentioned the plans in the beginning, those will have to be constantly monitored and updated along the way of your project. So just very briefly, because I've been asked a lot, okay, so how do we know now what communication dissemination exploitation is, but what are the tools to actually put that into practice? And to be honest, I mean, there's a wealth of different things that you could do. And of course, some tools are really clearly dissemination tools, like scientific publications. There's no doubt about that. But then there might be activities that actually cater to different of those activities. And the best example is probably the website, where you will be able to include different layers, and where on the very first page you will probably explain in a very straightforward way what your project is doing, trying to tell a non-specialist audience about your activities, about what you expect to do. But then at a certain point of time, perhaps you will have a publication section, or you will have a section highlighting the results that you've generated. And then you see that, of course, the website moves more into a dissemination sphere as well. So I just want to stress that, the boundaries might not always be clear cut. What's important really is that you define the purpose of your communication dissemination exploitation measure, that you tell that you have a clear picture of who is going to be addressed by it, and then identify the right tool and carry out the right activity, and also ensure that you have a clear and persistent messaging in place. So basically, ask yourself, why should you tell someone about it? Who should you tell somebody about? Sorry. And why are you telling them? What's the message that you will deliver? How will you deliver the message? How will you follow up? Because ideally, if we talk especially about communications, you may want to engage in a two-way exchange with them, and then really ask yourself, has it been effective? And if not, then reconsider and adjust. So just in a nutshell, and because my time's up, communication dissemination exploitation are running alongside the actual research and innovation work that you're doing in your project. And a modern approach on research practice, an integrated holistic approach, really sees those activities working hand in hand. They are interlinked, research and innovation activities, but then also communication dissemination exploitation, to make sure that you really create an added value, and that what you're doing has a positive impact on shaping our future. And so this is it. It's been very brief, but yeah, thanks a lot for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thanks a lot, Stephanie, indeed, for this excellent presentation and as a scene setter. I would propose, colleagues, panelists, if you don't mind, that we move on to the next presentation. We see already questions. We will perhaps take them right after the presentation on what is new under Horizon Europe for dissemination and exploitation. As you might have perhaps, you might receive the replies to some of the questions I'm seeing now on Slido with the second presentation. So if that's okay with you, Arya Marie, I propose you take the floor. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. So you've had a very good presentation from Stephanie explaining the importance of results, and she briefly went over what is a result. And so I'm going to start my presentation by focusing on this, and hopefully I will also answer in my presentation some of the questions. Can I please get the first slide in full screen, please? And there's a black box. Do you see the black box or? Okay. So what are results? When we talk about results under Horizon Europe and also under Horizon 2020, we mean anything that is tangible, intangible, and that it can be either data, policy recommendations, as we explained, but what you have to think is that for each result, there is a different audience. So you will have the policy recommendations that are less likely. The most obvious are the publications. You also have the software, if your audience is part of the industry, prototypes, pre-standards, but you also have, for instance, skills and knowledge. For instance, as part of a MSCA, you will start your project having master students, and in the end, you have PhD applicants. So this is one of the results of your research. The most important is that the results need to be reusable and exploitable by their target audience. Among all those results, we also have highlighted what you may know as the key exploitable results, and which is called as key results under Horizon Europe, which are the results with the highest potential to be exploited, and not only commercially. It can be exploited in a various. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. I realized that I have some background noise. So sorry. So I'll get back to this. So basically, you have the key exploitable results, which are the most important results. I think I will have to ask my colleague to stop using Teams because it keeps making background noise just for the time of my presentation. I don't know how to completely mute it. Thank you. And those key results are going to be used as part of the Horizon Results Booster, for instance, for which you will have a presentation later on at the end of this webinar, or they can also be used for the Horizon Results Platform, which will also be introduced later on. Next slide, please. So what have we learned from our experience of doing D&E with you during Horizon 2020? Well, we've noticed that for some of you, D&E is not so important. You do it because it's mandatory to tick the box and you just want to move on. So what we're trying to do is to explain you that it is important, it is part of your research, it is the way for you to show the added value of your research to society. It's also one way to explain to taxpayers why we are investing so much money into Horizon for research funds. We've noticed that for some of you, it was due to a lack of skills. So in the next slide, I will explain what we've done to address this point. There's also a lack of awareness. So this is why we started to create the, the go-to-market guides and so on. And we've also noticed that for you, it's just something that you re-notice at the end of the project because you want to do your final report. And this is a bit too late if you start thinking of D&E at the end of the project, because you need to start of it from the beginning when you have your first result. Otherwise, a precious amount of time has been lost, and then you do not have enough money left in order to conduct as much D&E and to the full extent as you could. Next slide, please. So under Horizon Europe, D&E is more important. It is now part of the legal basis, and that will be my next slide. You will have the proposal. We ask you to think clearly what you want to do about the D&E, but it's just we do not want in full details, and we asked under Horizon 2020, because we've noticed that some of you are resorting to external consultants. So they draft a wonderful proposal, but in the end, they are not here to help you to implement it. And this is not what we want. We want you to think about it and to see how you will implement it. So the idea is that at the proposal, you will only submit a very short, concise vision of what you want to do as part of your D&E communication activities and also IP strategy. And then 6 months after, once you've started running the projects, you know your colleagues, you have a better idea of the kind of results that you will be getting, then you will deliver as a deliverable, as a mandatory deliverable, your really complete D&E plan. And we think that it is also fairer because it puts everybody on an equal footing, on an equal foot. We also introduced the Horizon Results Booster last year. You may have heard of it. And once again, we will present it later on. And this is to help you develop the skills, to train you so that you are able to do D&E even after the end of the project. You are empowered, basically. We've also launched the HRP TV. So it is a channel where you have lots of tutorials, videos, testimonials. It's very inspiring. Strongly recommend you visit it. And I'm sure that my colleagues later on will also present it. In the proposal form, we also ask you to think of what will be the role of each partner, because sometimes you put company, but we don't know, it's not very clear. So yes, the company will be here because they are interested in the result. They will help us design the result and they intend to use it later on. And it also better helps defining the user's needs, the future user's needs. So, and also who will be in charge of D&E. This will be defined at the stage of the proposal. Of course, you can amend it later on. And if you want to have more people involved in the D&E, the merrier. But we hope that this will help you also think and structure your D&E plan. And we have increased the number of tools that are available during and after the grant, and also some incentives. For instance, we have the Horizon Impact Awards, which celebrates the impact done by done by researchers who have achieved results, exploited them, and we can see how they benefited to society later on. Next slide, please. So as I said, under Horizon Europe, now D&E is part of the legal basis. It's part of Article 39 and of Article 51. It's long, those are long articles, but basically what you need to remember is that it is again up to the beneficiaries' best efforts to exploit their results. So this is not new. But if they cannot do this, then they have the option to transfer and license them according to Article 40. And if they want to disseminate also, we are providing the Horizon Results platform to help them fulfill their obligations for dissemination. And they should do it as soon as possible. And also we tried really we put a stronger emphasis on the exploitation. The Commission shall also establish a dissemination and exploitation strategy for increasing the availability and diffusion of the program's research. So on our side, we are also doing more efforts to support you. And you will see throughout the different tools that are available, and we will do other webinars later on because we didn't want to overflow you with too much information, but we have a broad range of services that are here to support you. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, what are the main changes? As you've heard before, D&E is now part of the key impact pathway because we want to demonstrate the impact of EU-funded science through the mission, through everything, but your project as an entity also has a role to play into this bigger picture. So at the core level, you are trying to solve a problem, you are working on a specific field, and through your D&E measures, you will help reaching this greater goal and destination. So this is what we are trying to do. And there will be later on a slide where it's more visible and more understandable what is the difference between D&E measures and the key impact pathways. So we've also improved the proposal and reporting templates. They are mirroring each other, and they're also to help you, to guide you so that you have a better idea of what we are expecting from you. And there will be also some further slides later on to show you this. There will be a stronger emphasis on the reporting, so we'll monitor more what you are doing. So it will require a bit more effort from you, but then we will not harass you with further surveys or anything because we'll have all the information that we need. It will also give us a clearer picture, and we will be able to demonstrate to the citizens, to the world, what you are doing. So it is also to your benefit. And finally, we are encouraging you, if you do not want to exploit it yourself, fine. But then please transfer this to a third party whenever it's appropriate. And if you cannot find this third party, we will help you, because the Horizon Results Platform has a team of people who are there to make your research visible and help you reach the target audience, the right target audience. And as I mentioned, we have lots of incentives, and the most famous is the Horizon Impact Awards, which really gives you more visibility and also gives you a prize, a money prize, which is always nice. Next slide, please. So under Horizon Europe, as I said, the most important is that you need to do your best effort. You need to demonstrate it, and the PO will follow you, help you to do your reach, and this has to be proportionate, of course. We do not expect the same thing from an MSCA individual PO as from a beneficiary that has received millions and that has several members in its consortium. So we are reasonable. In some cases, the exploitation obligations may be a bit stronger, for instance, for EIC projects, because it's very focused on innovation. We also encourage the third party, as I mentioned. And the novelty is that if after 1 year, you do not have, you have not managed to exploit your results, it's fine, but then please publish it on the Horizon Results platform, because as I said, it will give you more visibility and it will increase their chance to be taken up by somebody else. The platform is free and you will have a demonstration later on. Next slide, please. So at the proposal stage, it is under key impact pathway, as I said, and the applicants have to submit a short, it's only 5 pages, D&E activities. So what is the main outline, what do you want to achieve, and you will go in further detail 6 months after in this detailed deliverable. And we also want you to update this plan. Of course, it depends on the time of the grant. If it's just a 2-year grant or 1-year grant, you just update it towards the end. If it's a 4-year grant, you need to update it in the middle and at the end. And of course, if anything significant happens during your grant, then please update it. And your project officer will also remind you that. Next slide, please. So this is the slide I was mentioning. So this is not mandatory, it's optional, it's meant to help you, the impact canvas. You may be used to this if you've applied to UK grants. So here we are trying to show you, and we also gave example to make it clear, what is the difference between the impact, the D&E measures, the expected results, what are the target groups, because for each result you will have a different target group, but also between dissemination and exploitation and communication, it may not always be the same target audience. So this table is to help you summarize things. So we believe that this is going to be helpful to clarify some points. And of course, we've also prepared further examples in the online guide with some concrete examples also to guide you. Next slide, please. Now, I said that we will give you a short overview. So in the reporting, because in the past, our questions were not very clear, we know this. So we tried to make it more structured so that you have a better idea of what we want. There will be, for most of the answers, a drop-down menu. You just have to select, and it also gives you an idea of what we mean. And we will also provide there are also some further descriptions for the things that are not clear, that may not be clear to you. So we provide examples, and here I've taken an example of a policy recommendation. So you can see a policy recommendation has a high policy regulatory potential. It doesn't have to be a policy for the EU, it can be also for the local authorities, but still, please report this. And who would be the target audience? Well, the policymakers. If there is a web page where you have advertised the result, publish it. If you've done an entry on Horizon Results platform, please put the link or the references, and then you explain how you started demonstrating it. Like it can be for policymakers through meetings, or you wrote a paper and a white paper, and so on. So this is step by step. And for the results that may not enter into any category, we also have the other. So you are always able to adjust to your needs, and your project officer will also help you. Next slide, please. You will also have, as part of the novelties, a results ownership list, because we've noticed that researchers do not always agree at the beginning, and this is a point that will be addressed by my colleagues later on who will own the results. So this is to clarify during the lifetime of the project to allow further exploitation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then the dissemination and communication activities, instead of asking you how many posters and leaflets you've published, here we decided to focus more on your activities. So it will need to reflect your D&E plan. And there you will mention, I did this, and this was mentioned, and it will be extracted. So you can say, well, I did it, it's ongoing, or this has been canceled, and then you explain what. And next slide, please. So this is a question that we get very often in the webinar. How will you monitor what happens after for the obligation? So basically, after the end of your grant, if during the first year you have not managed to take in, to find somebody who wants to take up your results, then you need to publish it on a platform, and we suggest the Horizon Results platform. Then you will receive, we think, a questionnaire. It's not set in stone yet. After 2 years, asking you how you're doing, you said you would be doing this, and so inviting you to go back on the grant EC grant management, where you can upload, like where you used to report, where you can write your updates. And then you have the fourth, after 4 years, we ask you again to go there and to explain what happened. Next slide, please. I think it's the Slido. Yes. So now it's just to see if the audience is asleep or if you're still following. What happens at the end of the grant? Be careful. It's either one or several correct answers. 1, the project is over, the results are in Cordis, and this is it. 2, the dissemination and exploitation obligations continue for the next 100 years. 3, if the project, previous slide, please. Slido has moved to the next question. Oh. If the project does not exploit the results 1 year after the grant, they need to publish the results on a platform. 4, the beneficiaries will still have access to the EC grant management to notify the Commission about their exploitation activities. The floor is yours. Interesting, yeah? So yes, I can see that most of you were following acutely my presentation, because indeed, after 1 year, if you have not published, you need to publish on Horizon Results platform, and there were 2 correct answers. Maybe the poll is not over, so I wait and see. When do we close the poll?
When you decide, yeah.
Okay, so as you knew, can you show the final results of the poll, Bella, please? So basically, the final results of the poll were, you were correct, it was HRP and the EC obligation, the obligation to go and to report. And no, you do not have 100 years to fulfill your obligations, and Cordis happens, but this is not enough. Okay, and now I'm going to give you a few tips and try to be extremely concise so that I do not take too much time from Yannis' presentation. Next slide, please. Voila. So, as I explained, we have revamped the proposal templates. We're using charts and tables. We're also asking you to use our kit so that later on we'll be able to see if you've participated in previous previous FP funded programs, and we can see what is your evolution if you first participated in a program and then this is your second attempt, if you're also involved in other research projects. So this is interesting for us, and it will avoid chasing you in the future for further studies. And it will also be helpful in order to cluster the project now that everything is structured. So, because as you know, as part of Horizon Europe, we will work more and more with portfolio. So we try to put the results together, and you will be probably asked to work with other research projects also as part of the Horizon Results Platform booster, we are trying to encourage this. Next slide, please. So for D&E, as I mentioned, we want you to be proportionate. We do not ask too much if it is a small project. We want concrete actions. So you can say, we will create a spin-off. I will attend this event. I will do to this pitching event. So mention some very concrete things. Do not stay broad. And in the examples of the online guide, we try to give you concrete examples that you can see what we want. We don't want some copy-paste. Really adapt it, tailor it to your reality, to your project, to your context, please. And the timeline is also important. So think that it needs to go beyond the lifetime of the project. Even at the proposal, you need to say what you intend to do during the project, but also after the end of the project. Even when there is no money, how will you do? You will keep the website alive. You will still meet up with the other consortia members, or you will do some Horizon Results Booster training. So please explain how you envisage this, or you will publish it on HRP. Explain what you have in mind. The target group is also extremely important because it's an investor will not need the same thing as a company or authorities or another researcher. So think about this. And what is their added value? Why do you choose them? And the follow-up plan. There is this new feature of policy feedback measures because, as you know, we work more and more inside the European Commission with evidence-based policy, and so it is interesting for us as well if some of your research result can be used for us in order to shape our policy. If it's not us, if it's more appropriate for another legislative body, for the local authorities, please tell us that my research has contributed to shaping the policy in Catalonia, for instance. I've been working with the local authorities. We are interested to know this. So please report back to your policy officer. And you can plan this also at the time of your proposal to work with those people. Next slide, please. And now for the communication, you will need to promote the project throughout the lifetime of the project, as mentioned by Stephanie. You need also to have clear objectives, define the main message, the tool, and the channels, because it's not always the same tool and channels that apply. And you need to also promote the projects beyond your community. So if you have a newsletter that is just meant to your consortium member, this is not enough. You need to reach out, to go beyond, if possible, the general public, to the local population. You need to go beyond, and to do this, you need to simplify your language, not use technical terms because they will not understand. You need to think that your neighbor, your grandparents need to be able to understand this. And finally, if you're planning some media activities, inform us because we have a strong social media presence. We can help you, we can give you tips. So inform your project officer, he will put you in touch with the right persons. And I believe this is it for me. And we will answer your questions after the presentation of Yanis.
Thanks a lot, Aria-Marie. I indeed propose that we move on directly to the next presentation, and then we take all the questions we are receiving now in Slido at the dedicated Q&A session. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Yanis and Veronica.
Just give me like 30 seconds to load the presentation and blur a bit my ugly background, if I can. Okay. So sharing my screen. Is it visible now? Can you hear me?
Perfectly visible.
Okay, good. Okay, now I think that Aria-Marie left it in the concrete tips of what you can do when you are preparing your proposals. and I will take it from exactly these points. So this part of the presentation is about the IP strategy in Horizon Europe projects and what you can do regarding the IP management. I will try to explain what is the results ownership list and also some other additional exploitation obligations that may arise during the lifetime of your project, but also after. And also I will have one slide on standardization of what we're trying to do on that. As I said before, Aramari left it in the part that you really need to take into account certain things when you draft your proposal. So one of these things is always thinking your results. Always keep an eye on what exactly your results are going to do, by whom, and how they're going to do the next step in their exploitation path. And of course, by achieving the exploitation, you're always achieving what exactly you have foreseen for the expected impact. So you really need to think if these results need to have kind of protection, what kind of licensing, if licensing applies, and how you're going to use them either directly inside the consortium, yourselves, or third parties. So in this respect, these considerations need to come early in the project, need to come early at proposal level, I will say, and have certain things agreed at the level of the consortium agreement. Although the Commission, as we have already heard, and we will hear afterwards again in the colleagues' presentation, we don't interfere with the consortium agreements. It will be nice to know that certain things can be resolved at that point that can prevent problems coming out later. So the proposal needs to present a comprehensive and feasible strategy on how to manage your IP, and that can include protection if relevant, and that, of course, that what exactly you want to do with your results and the licensing and protection you want to apply doesn't impede basically what you have promised for the expected impact and the outcomes of the project. So you have also to think about the freedom to operate and, of course, see what kind of background IP is brought in the project and what kind of foreground IP is generated and by whom and who is going to use it. And of course, you have to see what exactly needs to be open, because we are following very, very strictly the open access and open science principles in Horizon Europe, and you have to see what exactly needs to be public and published in a way that is accessible to everybody or needs to be restricted, and that needs also to be reflected in your thinking and in your proposals as of the beginning. And of course, see there are additional exploitation obligations, I will explain a bit later. Now, what comes into play as a novelty for IP in Horizon Europe is the results ownership list. The results ownership list is something mandatory, and allow me to go a bit further on that. So we would like from you to start thinking from the proposal level, and then in the grant preparation phase, who owns what in this project? Actually, who owns what and what you're bringing in the project. But when it comes to the results, we need to know who is owning what and who is going to exploit. And this is a snapshot in time, and we expect this to be delivered even at the last day of the project. And that is an obligation that may block, let's say, the final periodic report and the consequences that this might have. So we want to know the name of the owner, the country of establishment, and whether the results will be exploited by the owners or somebody else. This will help the Commission to be able to track and trace specific results that looked promising or they are promising, in order to be able to help beneficiaries do the next step in their exploitation path. And also helps you understand clearly who can do something with the results that you're producing. Now, what comes also inside Horizon Europe legal basis, and you will see it, is the public emergency provision. And of course, when we listen public emergency, immediately our minds go to COVID-19, which is a clear, let's say, clear example of what exactly this means. But how this affects the way we manage the IP is that when we have such conditions, public emergency, there is additional exploitation obligations can apply, and beneficiaries, if requested by the granting authority, by the EC and the implementing bodies, to grant a limited period, for a limited period of time, specified non-exclusive licenses to the ones that will be able to exploit the results in a fair and reasonable condition. I know that this can cause a lot of questions now. luckily, I have colleagues here which are specified IP lawyers that can take these questions and answer. And of course, this provision can apply up to 4 years after the end of the project, which is the limit, is the time limit that we have for any follow-up that comes after the end of the project in Horizon Europe. So what is the public emergency provision? It's the right to request to beneficiaries to grant non-exclusive licenses under fair and reasonable conditions when in case of public emergency. And this public emergency can affect the union's security, the public order, or public health, as we saw in COVID-19. To whom? To other legal entities that need the results to address the public emergency and to commit to broadly exploit the resulting products and services at fair and reasonable conditions. For how long? Well, the minimum is the duration decided by the granting authority, of course, but the maximum cannot go beyond the 4 years after the end of the project. And of course, it can apply for all projects each time that the work program includes additional exploitation obligations in that particular topics or in that particular domains that we're calling for. There is also the right to object to exclusive license and transfer of ownership of results from the granting authority. So the commission or the implementing bodies may object to transfer the ownership of the exclusive licensing of results if the beneficiary is generating the results have received funds under the grant. So you receive funds, then the commission has the right to block, let's say, to object, not to block, to object the exclusive license and the transfer of ownership. It's to a legal entity that is established in a non-EU country that is not associated with Horizon Europe, and of course that the transfer of or license is not in line with the EU interests. Again, this might cause a lot of questions, but this is not something new. It's time for all projects. Every time we have additional exploitation obligations mentioned in the work program, this right to object may apply. And how? Beneficiaries will have to notify the granting authority the intention to transfer results to a third party or to which is, as we mentioned before, in the categories that we have the right to object. For example, when the third party is located in a country outside the EU that has no connection with Horizon Europe. And the procedure will be put in place to determine the validity of the transfer. And just to explain, this is Article 39. I'm sure that this Article 39 has not changed with a recent update in the legislation articles that gives the possibility to the granting authority to add exploitation obligations that are tailored for some specific needs in the given program. So it is the Commission that defines that specific obligations, additional obligations further to the ones existing for beneficiaries to exploit their results, which is a residual obligation up to 4 years after the end of the program. Then the additional exploitation obligations can include all the things that I mentioned in the previous slides. Now, one last slide I have here is about standardization, which we believe it is a way to channel further the exploitation of results. A small, let's say, background information here is that when it comes to generation of knowledge, the union is doing an excellent job. I think that we have the more diverse and the more productive knowledge creation and knowledge diffusion in Europe. However, that somehow fails to be channeled either through the market or to the policymakers, but also through the standardization bodies. And you will be surprised, of course, you will not be surprised to listen that Europe is not very high in the rankings when it comes to standards creation, but Europe is #1 when it comes to standards that are supported by science. So scientific results created in Europe are the ones that are mostly supporting the creation of standards worldwide. And in this way, we would like to have a stronger monitoring when it comes to standardization. So there is a particular template inside the reporting template, a particular table inside the reporting template that asks about standardization. It existed before, but now it's a bit more enhanced in terms of the questions and the data we want to receive. Additional information obligation, of course, can be part of the general annexes. We want to guide our colleagues when it comes to Horizon Europe work program to mention standardization when relevant in the various calls. We will launch the standardization booster, which is following the logic of services that can be delivered to beneficiaries, can be delivered to you, to help you do the next step in a standardization, in a potential standardization process. And that can be actually supported by the Commission without further costs for the project. We would like also to do trainings both internally but also externally to explain how exactly this is going to happen. And of course, under Horizon Results platform, there will be a particular question that asks about standardization interest of the beneficiaries that want to use the platform to make the results more visible. And I think that summarizes my presentation, and I have my Slido question. And the question is simple. When is the first version of the D&E plan and communication activities expected? At the end of the grant in the final report, after the first result, whenever the beneficiary wishes, 6 months after the beginning of the grant as a deliverable. So let's open the poll and see what we have in this particular question. That's a fantastic result, indeed. That's 6 months after the beginning of the grant as a deliverable. And I would like also to support that whenever the beneficiary wishes, but indeed there are some rules and obligations that we all need to respect, both from the side of beneficiaries, but also from the side of the Commission. So indeed, 6 months after the beginning of the grant, when you know exactly what you want to do, when you know exactly what's the feasibility of the things that you have envisaged in your proposal, then is the right time to have a nice plan describing exactly the communication, dissemination, and exploitation activities that you would like to do for the results that you are probably going to have in your hands. So I think that, yeah, that's a very good result in the poll. And I think here I pass it on to Lara.
Thank you, Yanis, for this very nice presentation, which I'm just trying to put on my video. Yeah, sorry. Which also triggered a few more questions. So what I would propose now is that we simply go back to the questions that you sent us via Slido in order of popularity. And then I will also ask colleagues, of course, from the panel to take them as we go. We have 10 minutes to go with the questions. And again, whatever we are not able to answer because of time constraints, we'll use it for future webinars and to populate our FAQ on the funding and tenders portal. So don't worry, nothing will be lost. So let's start with the first one, the most voted. How is the pathway to impact different from the measures to maximize the impact? So Yanis and Arya-Marie, perhaps if you can take up that one.
Yes, thank you, Lara. Well, I will try to answer that. Although I would have wish that we have the colleagues from the impact unit actually to help us on this. But the overall idea of the pathway to impact is storytelling. It's something that you would like to say to the Commission. It's like that you would like to say to the granting authority about how you expect the impact to be achieved in a short, medium, and long term. So it is basically an explanation of how exactly we want to reach this particular impact. The other section, when it comes to the activities, it is pretty much reflecting what we had in Horizon 2020 and asks you to give us what are the activities, what are the actions that actually supports this pathway to impact. So you envisage an impact achieved, let's say, some years either during the lifetime of the project or after the end, and then you just describe the activities at proposal level, of course, not a fully exhaustive activities, but let's say the outline of them that will support this pathway to impact. And of course, you can have some overlaps, but basically you need to think that it is a narrative that you need to have from the beginning, that at the conception phase of your proposal, how you expect to reach a particular impact. And this narrative needs to be guiding throughout all the sections of the proposal in the grant preparation phase, but also in the implementation of the project and also after. I hope I answered this question. If there are more things to actually to add on that, maybe Aria Marie or
I think you summarized it very well. I would just say that the D&E measures are more short-term because it's during the time of the project and the four years following. Impact can be very long-term because very often you see the impact of your research 10, 20 years afterwards. So this is it.
Thanks a lot, colleagues. I propose then we take up the second question in order of popularity. How do the criteria for the communication, dissemination, and exploitation work package differ between Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe? Yanis, Aria Marie, or someone else in the panel?
Yes. I don't think that we do have criteria for we don't have criteria for the work package. I mean, the work package is in Horizon 2020 we expected a dissemination exploitation work package. In Horizon Europe we expect exactly the same, only that in this case the work package will include also the deliverables will include also communication. So there is something very clear that we expect from beneficiaries. We would like you to address specific effort and resources in explaining which kind of dissemination, exploitation, and communication activities will be there to support the results and also to support the pathway to impact that you have promised. The criteria when it comes to evaluation are exactly the same. Dissemination exploitation was under the impact criterion in Horizon 2020, and it remains under the impact criterion also in Horizon Europe. I'm not sure exactly if there is another meaning inside this question, but the intention, and I think Aria Marie can say a bit more on that, the intention is to help beneficiaries also with a kind of a structure in the deliverable of the dissemination, exploitation, and communication that we expect 6 months after the beginning. So in order to guide further and help further the beneficiaries to show them what exactly we expect in a minimum, and of course the beneficiaries can actually write on top of that more information that they think are relevant for the Commission and the granting authorities.
Thank you, Yanis. So I propose we move to the third question now. It concerns the HRP platform that you saw in Aria Marie's presentation. There will be later on a focus on that. But Yorgos, perhaps you can already answer this question regarding the obligation to exploit the results. How is no uptake defined, and when is the use of the Horizon Results platform obligatory? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lara, for letting me answer this question, because I want to give two kinds of answers, if you like. One is the official answer, the legal answer, and that is by uptake, we mean exploitation. And exploitation is legally defined in the Horizon text, in the model grant agreement, as the use of results in further research and innovation activities other than those covered by the action concerned, including, among other things, commercial exploitation, such as developing, creating, manufacturing, and marketing a product or process, creating and providing a service, or in standardization activities. So what we are saying in this rule is that if there is no such exploitation within a year after the end of the grant of the project, then we would like you to publish it in the Horizon Results platform. But let me also put my different hat on now, the team leader of the Horizon Results platform, which you're going to hear more on later on from my colleague. That we put this platform in place essentially to help you. You should look at it as a tool for you to advertise your results to the target audiences you have. And why do we want you to publish it in the platform? Because we are a team behind. And if you tell us what your needs are when you publish in the Horizon Results platform, then we are there to try and match your needs with someone who can actually fulfill those needs. So this is really the intention. You should not consider the Horizon Results Platform as an obligation per se. And legally speaking, you can waive this obligation if you have a strong justification. So for example, if you have sensitive information that you would like to not publish, or I saw another question further down on Slido, someone asking, well, it's not enough time 1 year after the end of the project to create a startup or a spin-off, maybe we need more time. Of course, that's fully understandable. And you can just write to us and tell us, look, we are still in the process of trying to figure out how we're going to sell these key exploitable results. So we are open to that. The intention is clearly to help you guys, not to penalize you. And if you think that you don't need this platform, write to us and tell us, okay, look, we found other ways. We managed to exploit our results. We don't need this platform. Fair enough. Even so, even if you manage to exploit the results, all you would spend is maybe half an hour, 1 hour to publish your result in this platform, and you gain extra visibility if you don't need it for anything else. So that's my answer. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Yorgos. So I propose we take the next question. When developing the dissemination and exploitation plans, will it be evaluated also on its alignment with open science principles?
No. I mean, of course, you need to respect open science, but open science is addressed under the first part in excellence. So it's not under the dissemination exploitation plans. You can say that you will publish your results and respect open science, but open science is addressed under another criterion.
If I may also, in this question, you have to take into account that when we are publishing in open science journals, for example, a big part of scientific dissemination is already achieved. So that's why we encourage a lot the open science, especially when it comes to publications, because this way you really fulfill a big part of the dissemination obligation that you have when it comes about your results, your scientific results. So this is actually goes hand in hand, but as Ariamarie mentioned, is not evaluated under the same criteria.
Thanks a lot, Ariamarie and Yanis. So we move to the next question. Yes, we still have time. So with the last report on dissemination exploitation plan for activities during 4 years after the project, and should be provided. So you're asking whether there will be any monitoring of the activities after the end of the project. So perhaps, Ariamarie, you can comment on that.
So the idea is that at the end of your grant, you will update your D&E plan and explain what you intend to do after the end of the project. And in the next 4 years, as I explained, you will have this questionnaire where we will monitor if you have done what you've promised to do. And we understand that life is not cannot be planned 4 years ahead, but then you need to explain, we tried to go and pitch, we could not find any investors, or we decided instead to further develop this aspect of our research rather than this one. But it will be monitored, and we will check on you after 2 years and after 4 years through the reporting. You will receive a reminder, and you will be asked to go to the reporting tool and to fill in what you have done.
Thanks a lot, Ariamarie. So the next question, it's on the proposal stage. So with the last, oops, sorry, yeah. Where is it? I lost it. Yeah, I can't find it anymore now. Yes, can you explain whether we so do we want to see whether we want to see key performance indicators on communication, dissemination, and exploitation in the proposal? So we can take that up.
You can put this, it's not mandatory. You can explain because it's quite detailed. So I would expect this more at the level of the detailed plan. But if you know exactly how you will be monitoring your progress and that you are achieving your goals, yes, you can put the KPI, but it's not mandatory. Not at the level of the proposal.
Thank you, Marie. So let's check how it is going with the voting of the questions. So should we, I propose we take the one, should we write project pathways towards impact and canvas in different way, depending if it is a research and innovation or an innovation action? Any recommendation to do it for each type of action?
I have to say that on this one, I am not well versed on these specificities. I would say since it is not mandatory, it's optional. You do it as you feel what makes sense for you. Yanis, do you have anything to complement?
Yes, it's as you said, because the idea is to have, let's say, unique templates. We don't want to have templates which vary in different parts of the program. Of course, when it comes to particular innovation actions under the EIC, there are some differentiations at the level of the template, but also on the reporting. But these differentiations are not that great to justify a completely different, let's say, approach. When it comes to when it comes to research innovation projects, this is what Ariamarie presented. It's pretty much what you will see in the proposal template. When it comes to innovation actions, there will be some differentiations, but the canvas, we are insisting that is there, and that actually is helping you to create, as we said, this narrative about your proposal from the beginning to the end.
Thanks a lot, Yanis. So I propose we move on to the next question. So with the last report on D&E plan for activities during 4 years after the end of the project, will there be any monitoring? But that we partly addressed already. So whether you want to complement, Ariamarie.
Can I see the question?
No, I think we have answered that already.
Yes.
It was the one actually for the following up after the 4 years.
Yes, I covered this. I covered this.
Yes. So we just move to the next one.
Yes, so whether you will invite experts, I propose we take this one on communication, dissemination, exploitations to evaluate these plans in the proposals or scientists.
The selection of the experts in the profiles, obviously, we want somebody with a scientific expertise, but we also have in the group of experts assessing, we also have people who will have dissemination, exploitation, communication experience, also experience working on the private sector, implementing innovations. So we cannot promise that in every configuration you will have 3 experts that are specialized in this, but there should be 1 expert in each setup. Yes, and we are calling new experts all the time to gain more expertise in different profiles.
Thanks a lot, Ariamarie. So I see it's 52. I propose we take one more question. I think it was already partly addressed in the earlier webinars we mentioned at the beginning, but let's take it again. So can we budget for dissemination and exploitation after the end of the project?
No, unfortunately, at the moment, there is no budget foreseen for after the end of the project. You will have access, though, to Horizon Results Booster services for free, but no, there is no budget. So perhaps you should start looking for sources with your host institutions or find ways in order to make it sustainable in the future for the next years to implement your exploitation, but the European Commission does not have budget for this for the moment.
I will just I would like to add here is that maybe if this question means that whether you can actually foresee budget during the lifetime of your project for activities that might take place afterwards, that's a bit difficult as well, because after the end of the project, you won't be able to declare any kind of let's say, expenses. But on the other hand, we're asking you also, as Aramari said, to think about what will happen with your exploitation dissemination plans 4 years after the end of the project. So this is a bit of an issue. In some parts of the program, there might be, let's say, some innovation actions. There might be top-up funds that can help you actually pass the value of death and actually take one result from the end of the project and help you do something. But so far, and especially under the merit of the dissemination exploitation strategy of the Commission, as Aramari said, we only provide services after the end of the projects and not funds. And of course, these services we're willing to enhance with more and more support to you. And this is also something that we would like also to receive from your side, which kind of services you would like to see from the Commission providing, how often, and in which particular domains. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Yanis. So I propose we break here. Well, now we will have a 5 minutes break, if that's okay with you. And we will start again at 11 with the presentation from Jörg Scherer. So see you in 5 minutes at 11. Hello, so welcome back. We start our second part. As you see, there is no dedicated time for Q&A sessions in this second part. So we'll simply take questions right after each presentation. And again, questions not answered will feed the FAQ section on the Funding and Tenders portal and future webinars. So Jörg, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lara. Thank you to everybody and for joining this very interesting session. And I'm happy to share a presentation focusing on IP management aspects in collaborative environments. Just give me a second to start the presentation. So let me know. It should work now. So now you should see my presentation. Please, it should be fine. So yeah, it works. Yeah, hopefully you had a nice short break. So we already had a couple of, let's say, very informative sessions on how to deal with communication, dissemination, exploitation, how to deal with the, let's say, the new rules on applying to these horizontal activities in Horizon Europe. And also Yanis gave a short introduction about very relevant IP issues when it comes to the implementation of projects in Horizon Europe. So I will build upon all this information already given in the previous sessions and will focus more on, let's say, giving a short introduction to the general aspects of IP management in Horizon Europe. And also I will present you to highly relevant services which might be available for further assistance and further support. So my name is Jörg Scherer. I'm the CEO of European Research and Project Office in Germany, as my colleague Stephanie already this morning. And I'm also the coordinator of the European IP Help Desk. And in this position, I'm very happy actually to start then here to dive a little bit deeper in IP aspects, but for sure, this is the first takeaway message for those of you who are already experienced with participation in European framework programs. There is a lot of continuity, and for those ones who are newcomers, I have to say, dealing with IP issues usually seems to be more complicated as it is at the end. So very happy that now really I'm in European projects and working with the European IP Help Desk since Framework Program 5. So I'm now going into the next generation. And what I see is there is, of course, I would not say it's a revolution, but there is an evolution when it really comes to impact-driven project implementation. So already from the very beginning of discussing the first idea of your new application, of your proposal, but especially when it comes to designing the proposal, to talking about the different roles of the different partners involved in the consortium, designing the work program, the work packages, and then, of course, also looking into, let's say, all the concepts which we're talking about today, like communication, dissemination, exploitation, open science, open research data, open access, but of course, then it's also about IP management, intellectual property. And if I say intellectual property, it's not focusing on intellectual property rights. So please don't be confused. Actually, it's about your knowledge, your data, your results generated in the project, but even more important, or also equally important, also all, let's say, the background, all the knowledge you bring into the new collaboration. So most of the aspects I'm addressing now in the next minutes is focusing on the collaborative aspects of Horizon Europe. We all know there are other funding schemes like the European Research Council or also mono-beneficiary grants. But of course, when it comes to IP management, it is particularly challenging when it comes to sharing knowledge in a collaborative team working in Horizon. And this is explicitly why the Commission requires you to present your concepts for the management of those aspects. already at the proposal stage, but then also later within the project implementation. And this is also relating to the pathway to impact, because it's exactly that's the point. You develop a strategy, and then your strategy will be turned into plans, into concrete actions. Usually those are the tasks which you present in your work package descriptions together with the milestones and the deliverables. And then, of course, you will have concrete outcomes, concrete results. Let's say first concrete results, and then you define and you select and you prioritize the results, which are the key results of your collaboration, of your project. And this is exactly then turning into the outcomes, which are described already in the topic description. And then on the Weidler scheme, then you develop the envisaged impact for your collaboration, not only on the medium term, but also addressing long-term aspects. And finally, we all know that there is a lot of, let's say, starting with a research endeavor, starting with something new. There are many things which are uncertain, which are risky. So it's about credibility, plausibility. So nobody can really expect you to define any single step and small issue which will happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years of your Horizon Europe project implementation. But you should have a clear strategy, plan, concrete actions, clearly described expected results, and then it turns into the outcome and the expected impact. So it's finally, that's what the evaluators are looking for, is the credibility and the plausibility of your concept. And there are many challenges related to intellectual property, or let's say the management of knowledge and results in a collaborative environment. And we know also from the previous framework programs, from our questions received at the helpline, or many questions received in the training, that the challenges go over the whole life cycle of the project implementation, starting from the project design and going then really until the post-project concepts. So just to mention a few, I mean, you are requested to define the knowledge, the background information, registered IP, unregistered IP, which you bring into the new collaboration. And you have to define what is needed. And this is a very important question. What is needed for the project implementation, and what is needed for a potential later exploitation? And of course, you are asked to develop something new, to be innovative. So it means, of course, you have to describe the state of the art of the technology and the concepts presented, and that might be underlined with results from patent analysis or from literature reviews already at the proposal stage. And then, of course, you have to see, and this is particularly important also for smaller businesses, for startups, for SMEs, what might you gain into the new collaboration? What is there also a risk to lose something, because you have a concept, you have a technology which is maybe not mature, but which is very, very promising, and you bring that into collaboration with many partners, and many of them you are not experienced working with them. And then, of course, you have to know that there is a clear set of rules. There is a stable, a robust framework of collaboration which you can build upon. And this is important to know, what are the basic rules and what are the opportunities to design and shape the rules in a way that it is even more favorable for your ideas of exploitation, for your plans. And this is also then knowing about what are the basic rules given in the different agreements set by the Commission, and what are the rules which can be designed in a flexible mode, for example, in the consortium agreement among the consortium partners. Then during the project implementation, there are many issues and questions coming up from partners in collaborative environments when it gets to define who was the creator of the new knowledge, how really to prove that the knowledge creation. So of course that has to be done by the different institutions, and you have to have appropriate methods, templates, tools, processes in place in order to be there on the safe side. And then, of course, there is an obligation, we will hear about that, to protect IP generated within the collaboration if appropriate. And then, of course, you have to discuss with your partners what are the appropriate IP protection methods. What is the best time for protection? What are the best, let's say, tools for protection? What is the best market area or geographical coverage for your protection? So questions like that will come up during the project implementation. And then, of course, just to go further, it's also about ownership. And this is a main issue. And that's I'm very happy to see that the Commission more or less put now a new issue into the reporting scheme, which is the results ownership list. Because we know that there were many discussions, not only discussions, it was really considered to be a main barrier of exploitation pathways, and then of course also a main barrier for achieving the expected impact, that there was no clear scheme and clear agreement on ownership, particularly for jointly owned results in the projects. So, and of course those issues need to be covered, I would say, more robustly, more seriously in Horizon Europe, because it will be subject to review. It will be subject to your reporting obligations. So I think it's not absolutely new, because I mean I think we all are. It's clear to us that you cannot exploit a system which you develop jointly if you didn't made up your minds about the ownership about the system, and you have a common idea how to protect the system, and you have a common idea about the exploitation system, exploitation pathway of the system. But now, of course, it's I would say the request is now really that you put that more systematically on your agenda, and it should be part of your discussions in the projects. Besides the research discussions, besides the work, the progress of your research and innovation developments in the project, or the technology developments in project, all these discussions should also be an important element and a crucial part of your implementation. And then, of course, later on, and that has been discussed already widely and will be then also part of the follow-up presentations, it's how to bring the results to the attention of potential uptakers. So who might be interested in taking the results up if you are not the one to exploit them by yourself? So what are the best channels? And then also what is the timeline for this? So just very briefly, you will see nothing new here. So of course you need a clear, let's say, set of provisions to deal with your obligations in an Horizon Europe project. Again, the consortium, and this will be done usually, first of all, by the coordinator is signing at the model grant agreement with the European Commission. The beneficiaries in the consortium, all the participants, will accede to this grant agreement. And then, and this is more or less, this is the standard, and I think it's important, it has been already mentioned also by Stephanie this morning, is have a look at it, look at the model grant, at the different provisions given, also specifically also in Annex 5 of the model grant agreement. So you know about that. I mean, particularly now at the beginning of a new framework program period. But of course, there is not much to be discussed and to be negotiated. This is to be done at the phase of the grant preparation when it comes to the consortium agreement. So this is a specific document which is to be negotiated and signed among the participants. So the Commission is not signing up that document, and there is room for flexibility. Of course, any provision in the consortium agreement cannot be contradictory with what has been defined in the grant agreement, but there is a lot of room, in particular when it comes to IP specific arrangements, when it comes to design ownership issues or access rights, timelines, and so on and so on. There is a certain flexibility which will help you a lot in order to define exploitation pathways later for your results fitting to your purpose. And it's definitely an issue that you should take more time on that and more emphasis given to that, in order to see that, of course, the protection and the exploitation of results will be much easier if it can build up upon some already, let's say, first agreements made at that stage. So again, you see here, this is a list of documents which you can find on the funding and tenders portal for your information, rules of participation. And of course, it's been mentioned already, you may expect that there will be specific information given in the work program when it comes also to IP. Like we have heard about that, like public emergency provisions for specific calls, or I'm thinking about some specific obligations when it comes to open licensing obligations and so on. So some of the aspects which are relevant for your IP strategy or your licensing or exploitation strategy might also build upon some of the requirements already given on level of the work program. So to be very brief on that, I mean, there are a few terms which you should be aware of as a participant in Horizon Europe, because you will be asked at the beginning of the project, or even in the grant preparation stage, you define the background you bring into the project. Quite easy, it's all the knowledge you held prior starting the project, and it's up to you to define the level of knowledge, the IP that could be registered IP like a patent or trademark or utility model, but also soft knowledge or know-how you bring into the collaboration, or data from a previous project you bring into the new collaboration, and you can shape it. So it's up to you to shape the amount and the level of knowledge you bring into the project as far as is needed for the implementation on the further exploitation. So you cannot just say, okay, I'm not bringing something in it, I'm just looking in the project what happens. Of course, that's not possible, because the project has been, or you have been a partner, or you are selected as a partner in the consortium because you are competent and you have prior knowledge which is relevant for the implementation and also the potential exploitation, but you can shape it. So for example, if you feel, or if there is an issue that you might infringe third-party knowledge or third-party rights, let's say, for example, I give you the example, if you have developed a database in a previous project and now you would like to bring the full database into a new starting collaboration, then you might risk that there is an issue with maybe some of the partners who jointly developed the database but are not part of the new collaboration. And then you need really to be very careful on that. So you have really to see here that all the knowledge you bring into the collaboration is not really infringing any third-party rights, or or in a way that you need the database, then of course you would need to ask for their permission, or you to get them somehow involved. The results that refer to be foreground, already. So this is the new results generated in the collaboration. And then, of course, access right means the right for use. And that's what, of course, the collaboration is about, because you are sharing your knowledge with others, you are working together. And then, of course, this is, legally speaking, meaning that you provide access rights to your colleagues in the consortium. I mentioned the issue of ownership, and here there's nothing new. The results are owned by the beneficiaries that generate them. But given the collaborative nature of the projects, then it might come up the situation that we talk about joint ownership. And then, of course, there is a default rule in the consortium agreement, so that which then already specifies how to deal with joint ownership issues. But whenever really you see that the ownership or joint ownership may also go into commercial aspects, so then, of course, you are highly recommended and you are really asked to design a joint ownership agreement among the joint owners of the knowledge created in the project. So ownership issues are really important, and joint ownership needs to be ruled. Access rights, I already mentioned them, of course, will be granted to your partners to the extent that the partners need the rights to work with you together in the collaboration, but also you need to provide access to your results. And this is also not only to the foreground, the results developed in the project, but also to your background brought into the project. If another partner wants to build up her exploitation strategy on your knowledge as well. Of course, we come to that, then there needs to be discussion on compensation. However, you cannot reject to provide access to your knowledge brought into the collaboration or developed in the collaboration. And now another issue here is also what is the timeline to request access rights to others. So let's say, as we heard, you might have an issue that you say, so we are not exploiting the results of our project ourselves, but we would like to make use of the Horizon results platform, so to get, let's say, interest of third parties to maybe take up our results. But then you have to be sure that you make an agreement that all the results from all the consortium partners are really brought together so that they have a validity which goes beyond the 1 year limit, which is usually described in the consortium agreement. So there is a need, and that might be done together with the agreement on the results ownership list, that you say, okay, we will really bring our knowledge together in an exploitable format, group that together so that if there is an interest party asking for getting access, that really the access rights granted among the partners in the project are valid even beyond 1 year later than the end of the action. So that's a need also to be discussed and defined in the later stage or in the last year, let's say, of the project implementation. Those are the rules. That's the same. Of course, during the project implementation, the granting of access rights is free of charge. You share each other the information. Of course, you do not charge for that. But when it comes to the exploitation of results, of course, that should be negotiated on fair and reasonable conditions. But this is really a term then which needs to be, let's say, discussed very specifically on the nature of the, let's say, of the IP and the potential, the innovation potential and the market potential of the IP. So it's something, but it should, of course, better than market condition. There is an obligation to protect in the project, but it's only if it is really appropriate, if it can be protected, so it fulfills all the requirements for protection, and it is really, if it is really beneficial. So it's not that you see that you have to file patents wherever you see a chance to file a patents, but you don't see really a need for that, or you see a chance really to valorize the protection. But of course, if, for example, you see any commercial activity needs a robust IP protection, then of course you are obliged to seek for protection, and of course the costs can be charged to the project. But that can also it does not only apply to patents, it could also be trade secrets or utility models, trademarks, and so on. And same, we already discussed this in the previous sessions. There is the obligation to exploit, and so you have to demonstrate that you put best efforts in exploitation activities up to 4 years after the project's end. And just to summarize here, what are the main, let's say, the 6 pillars, the main pillars of IP management in any collaborative Horizon project? First of all, to think about what is the IP used, the IP brought into the collaboration, so the background, and there is no infringement of IP rights from third parties outside the project. Then the second one is to capture the IP created, to have clear evidence on ownership issues, who is the owner of the results, how to deal with joint ownership in the consortium. Then, of course, to valorize and to prioritize and to select, let's say, IP which has, let's say, the highest value for further uptake. That could also then let's say, result into a freedom to operate analysis. That's something we see now coming up more and more, particularly in projects funded in the European Innovation Council, but here we still do not think in a very exhaustive freedom to operate analysis going over a long period with a lot of time, a lot of money also. It's rather a lighter version, but of course it should give you evidence that you do not infringe and you are not blocked by IP from partners outside the consortium, and you can specify that on specific technical applications or specific geographical areas, so that it is really very, let's say, cost effective. And then the IP protection, talking about that, costs for IP protection can be charged to the project with very big chance, particularly for small business, for startups, because it's of course, it could be costful. And the question here is, of course, might it be subject to IP protection, and do the costs for IP protection also then relate to the commercial value created by IP protection? And then later on, of course, once you have the IP assessed, protected, then of course, then you go into dissemination exploitation. And of course, that also goes beyond the project in the post-project management. Of course, you know, obligations are also including efforts in that period of time. I just closed the first part here again to outline what has been said regarding the plan for the dissemination and exploitation, including communication of results. I mean, here really you should concentrate on the key results. And of course, by the description of the key results, of course, you need to define the ownership status, which then will be the basis for the results ownership later, but then of course, sector application. And then of course, here you should also provide evidence what are the most appropriate protection measures for the key results. As this seems to be complex, you might request further information, and I'm very happy to say that there are services in place which may help you. And of course, all of them are free of charge. Those are services funded by the European Commission, by DG Research Innovation, DG Growth, and most of them, and they're focusing really on capacity building. So, I mean, there are questions, there are services answering to specific questions, but also to help you to develop capacities by your own to deal with all those, let's say, with IP issues, IP management issues, IP strategies in the future. So the European IP Help Desk has been in place for many, many years, and I really recommend you. There is a helpline service, and our lawyers, they are there. They will answer to your questions within 3 working days in the different questions. For example, if you have a specific questions when you are about to problems to understand, for example, specific IP rules given in the model grant agreement, you might ask our colleagues. So they are really there for hands-on. But of course, it's first-hand information. But of course, there will be might be very helpful really to get you through that kind of let's say IP issues in your Horizon or Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe project. But it's not only about the helpline. I mean, there are many other services, the helpline, the publications, training. So for example, the training, only last year, we had about more than 12,000 participants in our training scheme. So it's really a regular scheme. So you can really follow our curriculum on training modules, but also if you have, let's say, a critical mass of audience, you may ask also the European IP Help Desk for organizing a specific session for your project, for your institution, or so on. So you see here, there are a number of training modules focusing on IP aspects in Horizon 2020, or even then now Horizon Europe, like the basic ones, or more focusing on IP in consortium agreements, or IP related to impact innovation, or also specific aspects of freedom to operate, or focusing on specific technology aspects like IP management in ICT projects, food projects, or so on. And there are complementary topics which might be even more relevant now in Horizon Europe, like technology transfer, patent search, or IP commercialization, or IP licensing, which also may help you to develop your dissemination exploitation strategies for your Horizon Europe project. And there are guides, and you will see that there are guides in place for Horizon 2020, and we are about to update the guides now, taking into account Horizon Europe. So that will be coming soon, and then they will be all available then through the European IP Help Desk or the funding and tender portal. So see here that even if you have specific questions to markets outside Europe, that the European Commission also runs other help desks focusing on specific questions to markets outside Europe that might also be relevant, for example, if you involve international partners in your project. And you get all the contact details because through this presentation. So last but not least, I would like to refer to a brand new initiative, which really focus also on Horizon Europe and the extended expectations on IP management, on exploitation. So it's called the Horizon IP Scan. It's a pilot action. It's open for application since last month. And the services covers all the geographical areas which are also participating in Horizon Europe, namely the EU member states and the associated countries. Actually, it's built on the well-established concept of IP pre-diagnosis. But I have really, first of all, I have to mention this service is focusing on small and medium-sized companies, startup companies and SMEs. So it's not available for, let's say, universities or research organizations. So what is the purpose and the rationale of the service? It focuses on IP-related risks when starting with a new collaboration. We already mentioned that there might also be a risk that you, as a small company or a startup, gets involved into a larger collaboration, that you need to know how to handle that situation. So it's basically open for SMEs being in 4 different scenarios. So it is open for an SME which has recently received a positive evaluation summary report for its proposal and starting the grant preparation. So it does even not have to have started the project. So it's really to sign the grant agreement. And of course, this is the phase when the SME negotiates the consortium agreement. So we can help then the SME to deal with specific IP issues related, for example, to the consortium agreement negotiations. So, or the SME is in the starting phase of the project until up to 6 months after the signature, so that the service could also be very valid and helpful when it comes to design and draft the first plan for dissemination and exploitation, including communication of results. So if you have then, of course, the idea to see, okay, we need to refine our IP strategy, so you may also ask for help from the Horizon IP scan, or the SME has been signposted very concretely by our colleagues from the Horizon Results Booster, but then it applies until up to the half time of the project implementation, or it is in the framework of our cooperation with the Enterprise Europe network. So the key objectives is, first of all, to show the SME how to protect the existing IP when embarking into such a new collaboration, or to develop a new shared strategy with partners in the project. So finally, again, it's about capacity building. So really to increase IP awareness and knowledge about IP management, to get a better picture about how to develop, let's say, exploitation pathways built on the collaboration. So we look quite much about the collaborative aspects. It's not just a corporate IP diagnosis. It's really a diagnosis which is built. You will see that on what is my role in the collaboration? How will I benefit from partnering with others? What are the risks and opportunities through this kind of collaboration? And of course, it is not a legal service, the same as for the European IP help desk. So we are not, there is no permission really to offer a legal service. So whenever, and this is a general recommendation, whenever you need somebody to help you to apply, to file to prepare a patent application or so on, then of course you need a legal support. Or if you need somebody really to prepare a specific contract, a licensing contract, so that cannot be done in a legally binding way by those support actions. But then of course you need then additionally the help of professionals. And it runs like that. So the service is approximately 1.5 days in total. It's a pre-interview, then the experts. So the service is done by local experts in the respective countries. So also it's done in the language of the applicant, or if alternatively in English. So then there will be an interview with the SME applicant. There will be reporting and the debriefing, and usually it does not take longer in whole than 6 weeks. Then after 6 weeks, you should get then the report and the debriefing. You can apply through the platform, the Horizon IP Scan platform. So any application should go through this request form, the service request form. Electronically, you see here there is also a guide for applicants, which explains everything in detail. What I rushed through very briefly. It's on first come, first serve basis. And what is important is if one SME is applied from a collaborative project, then we will also ask the other SMEs involved in the same project to apply for the service so that we can offer a group service, a group consultancy for the whole group of SMEs. That's it, actually. So I try to be very short, so there is still a little bit time for questions. So hopefully you gained a very first impression that IP management in collaborative projects in Horizon Europe is a lot of continuation and is maybe not too complicated, and even more that there are services in place in the Commission or by contractual services which help you to manage your participation at the proposal stage, but also later during the implementation. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jörg, to you. So we have indeed a few minutes to take a couple of questions specifically related to your presentation. I also mentioned that for participants so that you know why we are not taking perhaps the most voted ones in general, but we will take the most voted ones for these IPR aspects. So the first question is, who owns the results when the project ends?
I mean, this is exactly what was mentioned before. First of all, the ones who generated the results. So being a participant in Horizon Europe, then the results stays with you. The question is really when it comes to the situation that there is joint ownership, and this needs to be discussed and negotiated, because the access rights of others to the results will finish 1 year after the completion. So first of all, if you have developed something and you're protected by yourself, then you stay the owner and it's fine.
Thank you, Jörg. So we had a question on the guidance and guidelines, but that you also mentioned in your presentation. So we will take the next one. Who is responsible for securing that a project component does not infringe existing IP rights? The partner bridging in the component or the project coordinator?
Definitely the partner. So the coordinator cannot be made responsible for all the IP brought into the project. So because it's definitely all the partners signing the grant agreement, but even more, this is exactly the point where all the partners needs to sign the consortium agreement, because they really confirm in the consortium agreement that they do not infringe third-party rights, so that if I need access to the knowledge of others, so I will be on the safe side, actually.
Thank you, Jörg. So perhaps we take one more question. So is the result ownership description also applicable to the lately funded Horizon 2020 projects?
No, I mean, this is really related to the new framework of Horizon Europe. So all the model grant agreement is valuable for Horizon 2020 or the new one for Horizon Europe projects. So of course, if you started the project in Horizon 2020, then all the IP rules stated in this specific grant agreement, of course, are valid until the end of the project.
Thank you. And then perhaps, because we are like almost on time, one more question on how do you expect that experts would handle potential conflict between open science and then IP protection?
This is a question we receive quite frequently, because I mean, on first look, I mean, it seems to be that the two concepts are somehow contradictory. So open science and IP protection, but actually we have a specific fact sheet also on that on our website. So it's really there are not contradictory by itself. So of course it needs to be managed. So for example, there is a rule in the model grant agreement, and you can also refine that in the consortium agreement, how partners who are going to publish results from the project through, let's say, a scientific conference, a paper, whatever, needs to inform the other partners so that they can really then also claim veto rights, or can start discussions on whether some information which they want to protect is subject to that kind of publication. This is clearly ruled, and I've even seen now in the model grant agreement, it says that I think it's at least 15 days before you publish something, of course, you need to inform your partners, but of course you can even define or refine the time frame in your consortium agreement. So it needs to be managed, and there are also it could also be part of your IP strategy that you have, for example, foreseen. There is an IP, let's say, management board in case there is an IP conflict, that they have a look at it and they can say, okay, now we have to see that this publication in the way it is done now cannot be published at the very moment, but then that should be discussed, because it's very clear if you have a legitimate interest in the commercial application of your results and IP protection, for example, through a patent is therefore very important or even crucial, then of course the partners need to respect that interest by their publication interests. But it can be managed, actually. This is, I would say, common practice, and also our colleagues in the helpline can help you to draft a specific, let's say, publication guides or IP management guides for your specific collaboration.
Thank you, Jörg. So I propose then we move to the next presentation on the Horizon Result platform from my colleague Michel. Just to mention, colleagues are telling me that we are like over 1,000 views on YouTube. So voilà, just to give you a little bit the flavor. But Michel, over to you. Thanks a lot, Jörg. And then again, we'll focus on questions specifically on the Horizon Result platform after the end of this presentation, so we can brush through the different aspects of the webinar. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Michel.
Thank you very much, Lara. Let me just take a second to get organized here, and we'll be all set. Normally you should see, hang on. My, hold on, I have to go down. My presentation is going to be in two sections. First of all, we're going to look at a couple of slides about the Horizon Results platform, and then we are going to go to a demo. So you've heard a lot already today, and just let me make sure this is in presentation mode. And everything all right? The screen is clear for everyone?
We don't see the presentation for the moment.
You see it? You do not see it?
No.
Okay, that's not good. Let me go back to
So
here.
it's on the share screen icon.
Yes. Hold on. Share screen. And here. And now do you see it?
Yes, now this is good. You can go in present mode. Yes.
All right, good. And let me just hide the floating. Now you should see only the screen, correct?
Perfect.
All right, everyone. Thank you for your patience. So just a few slides as far as Horizon Results Platform. You know that basically, if it exists, the platform was created to help turn our European-funded research into innovations. And it's really an opportunity for everyone to matchmake as well between the research players and the investor community or your partners or the policy making. So if we look at the next one, you've all heard a lot this morning about the key exploitable results. We know that this is really one of the most important results that you would have, and it's really a high likelihood of being of use, whether it be for a product, a process, a protocol, or for policy making. And you might be asking the question, who decides what is a KER, a key exploitable result? And basically it's the project consortium themselves that decide what is. So if we look here as to who today would be really on the Horizons Results platform, we have key exploitable results from Framework Program 7, Horizon 2020, and gradually we'll have them from Horizon Europe. It's a little bit early, but in the future, we may also have other EU-funded R&I programs available on the platform. So who can actually upload the programs? You have your primary coordinator contact, your coordinator contact, or your participant contact roles that are able to do so once you have your account via the funding and tenders portal and go on to the Horizon results platform. Afterwards, you might be asking, well, why? What's in it for me for going on the platform? And as discussed already, it's a question of visibility, really great visibility out there for your target audience. It's an opportunity to do matchmaking with the investor community, with policymakers, and enables you to link up with great support services. You just heard about the EU IP Help Desk from Jorg, and you will be hearing in a moment after me about the Horizon Results Booster and everything that they do with Alessia, whether it be for your dissemination and exploitation strategy, your business plan, or your go-to-market approach and pitching, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of real great benefits for you. And it is backed by an entire team, really trying to make it possible for you to have dedicated advertising of your research results and those key audiences that we spoke of, whether it be the investor community, your partners, or your potential policymakers that would benefit from your research. And we go along here. You've heard already a couple of times today about the obligations that are new under Horizon Europe, as far as after you've given yourself 1 year to really benefit from exploiting your researches. It may be that there's no uptake, and we'd be happy to help you with that. Then it is becoming obligatory to do so. And really, you can even decide once your research is available to do it immediately, to join the platform and get that visibility that it provides. Today, there are about 1,665 results on the platform. And it went live in September of 2019. And all the time, we have more results joining. So it'd be great to have you on there as well. And we also have the HRP TV that you've heard about. And this is really something that enables you to either listen to the experts, for example, videos about how should I approach a business angel, how should I approach a venture capitalist, how do I learn more about IP, or it could be sort of an inspirational video, and that would be like listening to some of the researchers that have made the jump to becoming an entrepreneur. And hopefully, in a short while, you will be one of the ones making a video of your research and your success and exploiting all the outcomes. All right, now this is what we just discussed as far as the videos and the platform TV. And we have 3 links. And what I'm going to do, you will be able to find these afterwards in the actual presentation. I'm going to switch now and do a little demo on the, hang on, let me just go to this one. Now you should be able to see my browser.
Indeed.
All right, let me just put it full screen. Now, when you follow the link, you'll get first to the portal and then here. This is when you have your account, you will have a section that's called My Projects over on the left. We're going to go in today to the second one, and you see that there's some actions going on. So let's go in there and look at project results. And we see that there's a draft that's called mini wind turbines. So let's go in there and edit the results. And this will give you a flavor of what sort of information you need to fill in to be able to make it very clear to any investors or potential policymakers what your research results are all about. So we have the title, mini wind turbines. We have a teaser, enjoying benefits of wind turbines on your terrace or in your garden. And then you can put up a video or an image. For today, I just put the Horizon Results platform. And then we look down at what type of target audience you're looking for. Here, I've selected private investors. Obviously, you can go into drop down, scroll through that and choose whichever ones you want. And what your needs are. Here, out of the drop down, I've selected venture capital or other types of investment, and really looking for partners and investors to enable us to produce at scale and deliver to market. So then you save your draft and you move on to the next page. And here we will be looking at if it's related to other projects. Here I didn't put any, which sort of contributors were also involved. So I selected this one out of the drop down. And here we have the owners for the exploitation. So that was the choice we had for that. You can put your logo, you can put information about any testimonials or references you've had, how to find your research, and then again, save the draft. Afterwards, we move on to a description. Obviously, this is a very short description, but you can do much more. Mini wind turbines for family and recreational use. In the policy area or business sector, it's energy. Some keywords that it will be proposed as well. You can choose amongst them or add them yourself. Then you go down to the contribution to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. You are given the actual list here again. And there are goal 7 and goal 11 that are relevant to this particular result. And it's airborne wind turbine that was selected for the type of radical innovation breakthrough. And we are not a member of the World Alliance for 1,000 Solutions. And afterwards, has your result had, or do you expect it to have significant influence on policy making? Yes, and in what sense? Potentially residential building codes. Up to you to go into detail on that. And you can put other information as well. Again, save the draft. Move on to the next section, and you have result maturity. Here we went directly for market development, and the next step is commercializing on a large scale. And do you have customers? Yes, they'll give you a choice of how many. We have put 6 to 30. And what kind? Individuals and SMEs. And which business sectors do your customers mainly come from? Climate action and energy. The unique value proposition, small wind turbines accessible for home use. All right, afterwards, you have a scalable business model. Not yet. If you do, obviously that's great for an investor to look at. Is your result replicable? Yes, and elaborate on that. And it's simplified production processes and easy access to raw materials. Is your result and your business model sustainable? Yes, and elaborate on that. And the product builds upon wind energy. So are you targeting geographical markets? Yes, Europe, North America, and Africa. Again, save, and we move on. And here, this is very important for the investors. What level of investment are you looking for? We put 500 to $1 million, and can provide, upon request, a short presentation, detailed description, case studies, white papers on the technology, a list of business partners, employers, or collaborators, list of current or prospective business partners, and a list of IPR or patents, complete and detailed business plan, market study. And in the market study, there's a quantitative assessment and a competitive assessment. There is not yet a qualitative assessment. And a list of current and prospective clients in your pipeline, and a list of investors. And basically, again, you move forward and you're ready to save yours. You can just scroll through it again. This is how it actually looks. Everything you've input already comes out in this easily readable form, and all the information that you have for either your investors or your policymakers to look through, or potential partners. And there you are. You can move forward with that. You read that and you're ready to publish. So that should give you a feel for actually, I'm gonna get rid of this. All right. I would like to find the X, which is hidden behind this part. And here we are. You also can go into HRP TV on the portal, and you have all of the videos that we mentioned, either what the experts say, or they get inspired by the researchers that have become entrepreneurs. And you also have just the homepage of HRP, as we call it, the Horizon Results Platform, with all of the information that is there, and the searches that you can do. You can filter them and move forward like that. So basically, that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I hope that helps you move forward in thinking about putting your results, your key exploitable results, onto the Horizon Results Platform. Thank you very much. Lara, I will pass it back over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks a lot for the nice presentation and the demo. I propose indeed, as we have a few minutes, that we take a few questions, again, specifically oriented on the HRP. So I don't know if colleagues can put on the questions we've received on the HRP so that everyone sees it. So yes, what is, well, the target audience of the platform? Who do you expect to be at the other end of the platform? Yes, Yorgos, Michelle.
Okay. Yorgo, you want to take that? I think Yorgo has been here since the start, and he is really the man who has all of the history and should be sharing his information.
Sure. Thank you very much, Michelle, for the nice presentation. So who is the, sorry, I missed the first, okay, it's just flipped. The target audience of the platform, yes. So any stakeholder that could have an interest in your results is, for us, the target audience. And if you go and try to upload the result in the platform, at the point where Michelle showed you the drop-down list of target audiences, there are several categories there. So yes, we target all the actors that can help you take your results further, be it funding institutions, be it assistant, technology experts, be it technology transfer offices, networks such as the Enterprise Europe Network, desks like the European IP Help Desk, etc., etc. We target investors, business angels, venture capital, corporate venture capital. We target business accelerators. We target policymakers, depending, of course, on the nature of your results. So we have a wide audience. It's because there is a wide range of and wide diversity in the results we have from the program. So for each kind of result, we try to identify the correct audience, and we're trying to slowly build some kind of a matchmaking services in the background for each kind of result. So that's, I think, the answer to the first one. The second one, can all partners publish results from their projects? Can only? No, absolutely. All partners can publish results. Of course, it would be nice if there is some kind of a coordination among you. The thing about publishing results is that technically, the minute the project, the grant is signed, you can, in theory, publish a result. However, of course, there is no result yet. So we would really love to see your results as soon as they are ready. You don't have to wait until the end of the project. And the way it works that, as Michelle explained in one of the first few PowerPoints, the project coordinator can indeed publish a result, but so can the participant contacts. So the partners can publish the result. And this is key because in many projects, a project coordinator is there until perhaps the end of the project, but it's the partner who owns the result that is, should have the incentive to publish this result. And by the way, you can publish your results after the end of the project or during the project. And as soon as they are accessible, then you can publish them. What happens when you do publish is that all the partners of the consortium will receive an alert. And if the project is ongoing, the project officer will also receive an alert. So, and this is for reasons of transparency. And we have an open line, if you like, that if one of your partners has an issue with what you said, they can contact you directly because they will see who published it. And if for whatever reason there is a strong disagreement among partners, then you can contact us and explain what the reason is, and we will temporarily remove that result from the platform, put it in draft mode until we hear back from you that you agreed on it. So next question, the result platform looks interesting, but I do not understand how this would look for an SSH project. Social science and humanities project have a lot possible influence in education or in best practices or input policy recommendations in the area. And as the previous speakers mentioned earlier, exploitation is not only commercial. Stephanie said that in the very beginning. It could be an input to education. It could be an input to policy making. It could be an input to standardization. There are various kinds of uses that come out of your project results. So social sciences and humanities is definitely an area where we could have exploitable results. And then when you upload such a result, you can state, for example, that your target audience is policymakers, or that it's academic institutions, etc. And you don't need to fill in. If you say that your result type is policy related, or something that is not that does not involve tangible research in the lab, you don't have to fill in all the questions asked on the maturity, etc. So you will see that when you actually fill in that questionnaire, it kind of asks you the questions, and then you can skip the questions that are not related to SSH. It seems that the Horizon platform is too focused for commercial exploit. Is there that is what I just said, Javier. It's not solely focused for commercial exploitation. You can actually, in your result, if it's related to a standard, you can say my result type is policy related, and then you can mention in a field called influence on policy, and then in there you can specifically say what is the influence on policy, and in this particular case, standardization. Now, in the future, we will ask a very specific question on standardization, as Yannis mentioned earlier in the presentation. So, and then again, the same holds, as I said earlier, about target audiences. You can select your target audiences. If it's not investors or entrepreneurs or people to help you protect your IP, etc., but it's rather, because you want to influence policy, then you can emphasize your result description there. I would invite you to go in the platform. In the landing page, you see different short links where it says policy related results, and you can click on those and see how those look like. Is use of the Horizon Reserve mandatory for H2020? And no, the Horizon Results platform is not mandatory for H2020. But I'm really hoping that you guys will use it, because you will waste half an hour, 1 hour of your time putting a result up there, and then we have a team of 6 behind that work to find a way to address your needs. So I don't want anyone to consider this as a burden. The point of the whole point of the platform is to help you guys. So this is what we are here to do. How do you feel in these sections, which are very commercially oriented? So you just say not applicable. We have a choice which says not applicable. And as I said earlier, if your result is policy related, you will not even be asked some of those questions. You will, the questionnaire is kind of like a hierarchical, and there is some kind of a tree structure. And if you say my result is policy related result, then you don't even get those questions.
Yorgos, sorry to interrupt you. So we take one more question, the one on the expected impact, and then we move to the next
I just want to answer. The expected impact is
indeed,
to promote your results in general and to help you in this, you know, many call it the valley of death, where, you know, you find it difficult to find a customer or someone to use your result. Now, for policy related, it's maybe a different thing, but it's really to maximize the impact of your results. That is what the effort is in a very plain way. But let me please quickly answer the next question. Yes, the Horizon Results platform has a link with Innovation Radar, because what we do is we have the database of Innovation Radar assessments, and at the moment you upload your result, you can link your result with an assessment that was done. Do I have more time?
Thank you, Yorgos. I think we will simply move to the next presentation.
Okay,
it was super clear. Again, we will use the unanswered question to feed our FAQ section on the Funding and Tenders portal. And also just to remind you that the session is being recorded, will be made available after the webinar on the Funding and Tenders portal, so you can rewatch it. And the slides will be uploaded as well. So all the material will be available after the webinar. Thank you. Alessia, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. My name is Alessia, and I'm partner and CEO at Meta Group, which is the leading partner of the consortium, which is currently running the Horizon Results Booster. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, I hope that you can see my full screen. This will be the last presentation for today's webinar. And this is because the Horizon Results Booster, it's like, you know, the cherry on the cake. The Horizon Results Booster is the initiative that can help you and support you actually to achieve whatever has been presented so far during this webinar. And this will be done free of charge for the beneficiaries. But let's start from scratch. You heard for the whole morning that the generation of an impact strictly depends on communication, dissemination, and exploitation, strategies and actions. And what I can add to that is that wrong basics generate wrong strategies and actions. From our experience, wrong identification of key exploitable results could happen. Confusion between customers and users and partners. Use models not fully identified. So it's important to dedicate the right effort and time to dissemination and exploitation and uptake of research results. It's like when you decide to run a marathon, you do not decide to run 42 plus kilometers plus 195 meters the day before the marathon happens, or in the day in which the marathon takes place, or even worse, the day after. Therefore, you should start thinking to dissemination and exploitation strategies and actions as soon as possible. So transforming project results into concrete benefits, it's a must. And the Horizon Results Booster initiative, it's actually supporting you to maximize the impact of projects. Which projects? Currently, we can support FP7, H2020, and Horizon Europe projects. Clearly, referring to previous framework, FP7, in the specific case, in some cases of Horizon 2020, we can support ongoing, but as well closed projects. What we offer? We offer 3 different types of services for beneficiaries' benefit. Service 1, it's portfolio dissemination and exploitation strategy that will help you to develop portfolio results, design effective dissemination strategy and exploitation. But I will go then through more details. Second service, business plan development, which will help you to finalize your business plan, and go to market, which will go more vertical on specific needs, issues, elements that should be taken into account in this direction. Services are delivered completely free of charge to eligible beneficiaries because the initiative is fully supported by the European Commission DG/RTD. Services can be requested a la carte from the list when completed your application. And at the same time, while picking the best services you may take benefit from, you can at the same time select the best timing for the service delivery, which can happen from the moment in which you submit your request till 1 year time. Your Horizon Results Booster then will provide you with a service team, a set of experts that will act as facilitators, coaches, mentors, and will guide you. All the services are delivered remotely and virtually. Just a bit more of details on the different type of services. I mentioned you 3 different type of services. Actually, in the screen, you can see 3 different colors, which divide the services among dissemination, exploitation, and go-to-market. So service 1, module A and module B are dissemination services. Module A is the entry point for dissemination services. Please bear in mind that our dissemination services are meant to be for joint dissemination. Therefore, services can be accessed by individual project or already created project groups or cluster of projects. If you are an individual project and you would like to benefit from module A and module B, you can request the service and then the experts will help you in creating your project group. The aim of service 1 is to create the project group, if not already in place, to prepare the portfolio of results for joint dissemination and to provide you with the target audiences and how to better address them. Then there is the module B, which can be assessed by project groups. And during the module B, experts support you in the preparation of joint dissemination plan and creates the project group's visual identity and video. Then when it comes to exploitation services, we have service 1, module C, and business plan development. Module C is the entry point of exploitation services, which will help you to improve, define the exploitation strategy with actions, while the business plan development aims at finalizing your draft business plan or action plan for exploitation. Then we do have the go-to-market services. Actually, the go-to-market service is divided in 6 sub-services, which could go from pitching, so capacity to present in front of interested stakeholders, IPR support, so orientation in the IPR landscape, and this is just an introductory service to then what could be provided to you by the IPR help desk. Innovation management, which is a specialized training, exploitation options, so exploitation and in-depth analysis of the different option, business services among co-design of a commercialization plan, evaluation of business plan potential, creation of a startup spin-off, and finally, access to non-EU funding. Actually, in the slides that will be then provided to you, you have some, I would say, more administrative type of information, but I already more or less introduced them. So Module A and Module B are for project groups. Module C for individual projects and focuses max on 3 key exploitable results. Business plan development, it's open only to individual projects and focus on 1 key exploitable result, while for what concerns go-to-market services, those can be activated once if you requested Module C and BPD, those services are already completed. Another nice information for you, I think, it's that each eligible project has the right to request all the listed services, but just once. Therefore, you can take advantages of all of those, but this could happen just once in the project's life. In the following slides, which I'm going to pass through quickly, but you are going to receive them, you have all the flows which characterize each one of the services that I was introducing you with the deliverables, the methodologies, and the timing foreseen for the service delivery. For what concerns more in details the go-to-market, it's not possible actually to request all the 6 sub-services. Therefore, there are some suggested packages from our side, which will allow you to take, the most benefit from a combination of the different services. How to get in touch with us and how to request the services. Yeah, there is a functional mailbox, which is booster@meta-group.com, and there is, of course, HLB website and platform, and you have the link to access it, and everything is pretty straightforward. How to apply? Again, something very easy. You need, first of all, to register yourself as the applicant in the platform. Then you can fill in and submit your application, and you just need to provide project ID, name and email of the applicant, project coordinator, and PO. You can save draft applications and continue, of course, whenever you wish before submitting. During the application phase, you will be somehow guided by alerts, which will let you know if you, at least on what you're going to declare, ready to benefit from more service or another one. Any case, you are not prevented to go on and request the service you think would be the best one, or the services you think would be the best one for you. What happens then? The eligibility of the application is checked by the HRB team on the commission side. Experts are proposed by us, so the contractor, and checked by the commission. The experts organize a preliminary call with the beneficiaries to define the service delivery plan and to align expectations with service delivery. If the expert during the first call realizes that the project is not ready for a specific service, the expert can propose an earlier one. Then feedback questionnaires are gathered at the very end. Outputs, deliverables, and everything will be saved in a dedicated workspace in the platform, and automatic email alerts will be sent out to all the registered users to the specific workspace. What happens on the beneficiary side? As I was already anticipating, experts act like facilitators, guides for you through specific processes. And therefore, I have to say that efforts and collaboration and commitment will be requested as well from your side. In the slide, you have summarized which is the estimated total work commitment that is requested on the side of the beneficiaries, which could go from very quick service delivery, which is service 1 module A, around 1 equivalent working days throughout the duration of the service delivery, till to the 3 to 10 equivalent working days for more complex services. for you to have some numbers and to let you understand as well how big is what the Commission is doing and providing to the beneficiaries. Currently, we have up and running 149 experts delivering the services, already involved since July 2020, 639 projects with 442 assignments, more than 1,100 beneficiaries, and more than 3,500 organizations. Another important thing for you to know is that the Horizon Results Booster will be up and running till 2024. And therefore, even if my suggestion is as usual to book your services as soon as possible, you have some time in front of you as well with new projects you will be awarded to benefit of the Horizon Results Booster services. It's always nice to know that the ones who already benefited appreciated the service delivery, and you have some quotes on the screen. What we try to do is always to customize the service delivery for the needs and the specific benefit of the beneficiaries. And currently, I mean, this has been, I would say, successful. So thank you very much. And of course, get in touch with us and request the services as soon as possible. We will be happy to support you throughout the whole process. And now I'm ready for questions, if there is any.
Yes, there are. Thanks a lot, Alessia. Perhaps I can ask colleagues if you can put up the questions we've received, again, specifically on the HRB. So some of these you answered them already, but I let you go through. Yeah.
Yes, so these services are available at the end of project, during the project as well, during the project and at the end of the project. I mean, as I was anticipating, the sooner the better, to let you then organize as well with the activities that you already, of course, programmed in your project. And at the end, for the ones, for the projects which are already closed, of course. So our application to HRBs are taken many months to approve. Actually, this happened at the very beginning because applications were gathered for a first batch before the contractor started to work. And therefore, currently, I can assure you that the timing which passes in between the moment in which you submit your application and when experts are appointed, it's not longer than 10 equivalent working days. So this is what is currently happening. And I have to say, this is happening since many months so far. So do not worry about this timing. Everything is very, very fast. These services are available. Okay, no, this was already answered. So can the Horizon Results Booster be used to create the dissemination exploitation plan of an individual? The Horizon Results Booster can support you. In this case, Service 1, Module C is the right service to request, can support you in create your dissemination and exploitation plan. Please remember, experts act like facilitators and guides for you. Experts cannot substitute project partners in what project partners are supposed to do. But the answer is definitely yes to the question. Then Horizon Results Booster can be requested only by research center in universities. No, absolutely not. Horizon Results Booster, it's open to any different type of partner. Usually it's the coordinator who submits the request or the work package, the dissemination and exploitation work package leader. Then it depends, of course, on how the project is organized. And so therefore, no, could even be an SME, an industry, an NGO, an institution, a public body. I mean, anybody can request on behalf of the project the services that we can provide under the Horizon Results Booster. And you have as well to consider that in case of closed projects, this is even more important because perhaps there is one partner which still has the interest, or perhaps owns the rights to exploit of a result which was produced in a closed project and would like to benefit now of the support that we can provide under the Horizon Results Booster. And I cannot see further questions on the screen, so perhaps I think I've answered on the dissemination exploitation plan. I've answered on the timing. Okay, how can we plan a good time to work with HRB? Receiving this help also takes resources. I need to, sure. So a good time. Of course, if you have to submit a new proposal, my suggestion would be to include already in the new proposal that you would like to take a benefit from that and then plan your activities. Then, of course, if you didn't so far and you have an up and running project, then I would suggest that you think, I mean, at least 1 month in advance, but considering usual timings when running activities in a project, I think that perhaps even 3 months earlier could be a good suggestion. But just to let you know, if you submit an application today in the Horizon Results Booster, the service delivery can even start from July 2021. And therefore, as I said, on our side, timings are pretty, quick, and we are speedy, I would say, in this direction. And in terms of funded, please bear in mind that the time commitment, of course, that project partners will be dedicating to these activities can be reported in the timesheet of, when reporting costs to the Commission, of course, because this is related to achieving the impact of your project. Is the results available also? Is the results booster available also for H20 projects that have already? Yes, of course. FP7 and H2020 projects already ended, no matter since when or from when those are ended, actually. And our project. Oops, sorry, Lara.
No, so sorry. We take perhaps one more question, and then we again we'll come back to it later. But thanks a lot, Alessia.
So I see one more question. That our project funded under non-Horizon 2020. Horizon funding is life eligible for support? Unfortunately, not. The framework programs that are eligible are FP7, H2020, and Horizon Europe. I can add one more information in this direction. Are eligible projects which sign directly a grant agreement with the Commission, but as well projects which are receiving an indirect funding, which was in any case coming from FP7 H2020, like projects funded under the knowledge intensive communities or Prima Foundation or AAL, I mean, the so-called Article 185 funded by the Commission. So indirectly receiving FP7, H2020 and Horizon Europe funding. Sorry, one very last, because it's really, is it already available? Yes, of course. This is up and running since July 2020, and it will be up and running till 2024.
Many thanks, Alessia. We have received many questions, actually, also on the other parts. Many are related to the proposal stage and evaluation process. So for these ones, we would kindly ask you to also go back to the earlier webinars that we mentioned in March and in April that were dedicated to the evaluation process and how to put together a proposal. There will be the specific thematic info days, as we mentioned at the beginning, unfolding between the 28th of June until the 9th of July for the specific topics. So there as well, there might be some further elements when it comes to specific topics. And then we'll come back to the questions in future webinars and the Q&A section on the Funding and Tenders portal. I would propose you to end. We took more time to take your questions. That was our priority. But perhaps if we can end with one more poll, we would just like to see where are you based, if that can work, if not. Okay, so
just in the meanwhile, sorry, Lara, but just to remind that the presentations will be available on the event page, and I will also add the links to the previous webinars on the event page as well.
Thanks a lot for the clarification, indeed. So voila, just to take a little bit stock of the audience we're having and how far-reaching a digital event can be. So nice. Okay, thanks a lot. That looks really interesting and widespread. I would like to thank you and also my colleagues and all the panelists for the webinar today. We really hope you enjoyed it, you find it useful, and that you will also find useful the follow-up material we will post on the Funding and Tenders portal. Thanks a lot again, and have a nice day. Bye.